Good morning. Today we are going to be reading the next chapter of The Case of the Stolen Sculpture. So if you remember when we left off, the kids had just found out that the statue of Goudet was missing from the museum in their town, and they were all on their way to meet up there to try and solve the case. So we're going to jump right into chapter 2 and see what happens next. So as we're reading, of course, you're going to be thinking of possible suspects. You're going to be looking for clues. And remember that sometimes authors of mysteries will put in a red herring, and a red herring is that suspect that seems very, very obvious, but the author usually puts it in there to kind of throw you off the case. So keep an eye out for that too. Chapter 2 is called Silver Lining. And if you've ever heard of a silver lining before, a lot of times people use this in an expression to try and look at the positive side of things. So, for example, if it is storming and you're kind of bummed because you wanted to go out and play, somebody might say, well, the silver lining is, the grass needs water to grow, the plants need water to grow, the flowers need the water. So it's just a way to look at the good side of something that might otherwise be bad. Okay, so chapter 2, Silver Lining. When Clementine finally reached the museum, she was in for another surprise. Whoa, she said. She hadn't seen the lobby this crowded since the touring Picasso show came through 2 summers ago. But this was no ordinary crowd of art fans. This was a mob. Clementine, tall for a 13-year-old to begin with, stood up on her toes and called out, Amal, are you here? Amal's head, instantly recognizable, thanks to her star-patterned hijab she always wore, appeared above the crowd. She was standing close to the ticket booth and quickly waved Clementine over. Clementine pushed her way through the mob. Guys, she gasped when she reached Amal. Raining and Wilson were standing beside her. What is going on here? It's the robbery, Wilson said, keeping his eyes on his tablet computer, which he poked and swiped and squinted at. It's all over the local news. Your mom's a big star. I wonder where she is, Clementine said, looking around the crowded lobby. We haven't seen her yet, Raining said. Just then, a man wearing a vibrant blue suit, a bright shirt, and an orange tie strode toward the lobby from the long hallway beyond the ticket booth. Who's that? Wilson asked, finally looking up. That's Mr. Carbony, Clementine told her friends. He's the head of the Education and Community Relations Department. Mr. Carbony climbed right up on the ticket counter and raised his arms. The crowd quickly quieted, and he coughed and cleared his throat. Thank you all for supporting the museum during this difficult time, he said. He pulled an orange pocket square from his lapel and patted his tearful eyes. As you must have heard by now on the various news websites covering this story, our statue of Goudet has been stolen. Thankfully, our insurance company has been most accommodating and helpful during this ordeal. So I'm going to stop there for a second. So I'm sure you've heard of insurance or insurance companies, but you might not know exactly what they do. So a lot of people have insurance for a lot of different things, but I'm thinking one of the ones that you could probably most relate to is like if somebody in your family or maybe even you were to get insurance for your phone. So for example, usually for a phone, you have a monthly bill. So let's say it's like $30 a month. If you opt to get insurance on that phone, then they might say, okay, well, it's going to be an extra $10 a month. So you'd pay $40 instead. And then that way, if you like drop your phone and break it, if it falls into the pool, or if it goes missing, you've paid into this insurance. And then that way they'll either give you a new phone or give you some money towards it or something like that. And it just kind of secures that item. He already contacted the insurance company? Does that mean they're giving up? Clementine whispered to her friends. So soon? When the piece was discovered missing yesterday morning, Mr. Carbony went on, our director immediately notified the police and the insurance company. While the police investigation will continue, the insurance company's investigation has been completed, and the payment has been approved. Wow, Mo whispered, looking surprised. They're paying out before the police have closed the case? So these are definitely some important clues, guys, because that is a little odd. Clementine shrugged, keeping her eye on Mr. Conboy. He grinned despite the tears and clasped his hands. Which brings me to the exciting news, he continued. Something of a silver lining to the big gray cloud we're faced with here at the Capital City Museum of Art this week. What does he mean, a silver lining? Clementine whispered a little too loudly. Some of the crowd turned to glare at her. She didn't care. The statue of Gudea was one of her favorite items in the museum, and Mr. Carbony was talking about giving up the search and silver linings. She was so mad she could spit. As some of you may remember, I recently proposed a new educational wing for the museum, Mr. Carbony continued. Unfortunately, the board could not approve the new wing due to a lack of funds. But thanks to the very generous insurance policy the museum held for our Gudea, I am now pleased to announce that the new wing will be possible after all. The crowd seemed to gasp collectively for just an instant. Then they erupted with applause. Thank you, Mr. Carbony said. Now, the insurance payment is a good sum, but even with that money, we still won't be able to include all the wonderful features we had in mind. But regardless, it will be a great resource for the community, and in particular, the children of Capital City. The applause surged again. Oh, I like that strong word, surged. Clementine took Wilson by the hand and pulled him out of the crowd, nodding for Amal and raining to join them. They gathered near the entrance to the Greats of American Painting exhibit, where the roar of the crowd and Mr. Carbony's endless speech weren't so loud. I guess that is a silver lining, Amal said. She looked at Clementine. You've been hoping they'd find the money to build that wing, haven't you? I have, but Clementine trailed off. She had to admit, the new wing was good news. Still, the idea that the Gudea was gone and no one was looking for it made her absolutely miserable. She tried to smile, but her grin flopped. Don't cry, Clemmy, said Wilson, putting a comforting arm around her shoulders. Clementine knew Wilson was just trying to make her feel better, so she gave him a pass on the cutesy nickname. But given that she was a foot and a half taller than Wilson, his arm around her shoulders was a little awkward. I'm not crying, she said, sniffling. She could have been. Clementine cried a little more easily than she would have liked. We should find my mom. So now you see these 3 little stars or asterisks. This just indicates or shows us that there's either a break in time or they're like maybe switching to a different scene. So this one features Mr. Carbony and Dr. Wim talking. I'm telling you, Mr. Carbony, said Dr. Wim a few moments later, this phone has been ringing nonstop. Clementine and her friends stepped into her mom's office and huddled together near the door. The office was small and cramped with papers, boxes, crates, and poster tubes. Books, and more books were piled on every surface and on most of the floor. Dr. Wim flashed the kids a grin and moved the phone from one ear to the other. Everyone wants to pitch in, she went on, talking into the phone. One of our members has started a drive to raise the additional funds. All right, bye. Clementine's mother hung up the phone and turned to face them. Clementine, she said, pulling off her glasses and sticking them into the thick bun of graying blonde hair on the top of her head. What are you doing here? I heard about the Gudea, Clementine said. I'm so upset. Oh, honey, her mom said with a sympathetic smile. I thought you would be too, Clementine went on. Dr. Wim frowned at her. She stepped around the clutter on the floor and bent down in front of Clementine, putting a hand on each shoulder. You know, she said, I was distraught. But then Mr. Carbony and I realized how much good this insurance money would do for the museum and for the community. I guess, Clementine admitted. Dr. Wim patted her shoulders and straightened up. Clementine and her friends stepped into... Oh, did I put that in there twice? You know what? I put this page in twice. I'll have to take that out. Okay. What were you and Mr. Carbony talking about just now? Raining asked. Said Dr. Wim. On the phone, Raining explained. Raining, Amal said. That's none of your business. I'm sure it's just museum work stuff. Oh, it's fine, Dr. Wim said. She went to her desk and poked around among the stacks of paper and notebooks. Then she lifted up her computer's keyboard and peeked underneath. I was just telling him that since his announcement, in just the past 30 minutes, the museum's members have banded together. They're going to raise even more money so all of our dreams for the new education wing can come true. Isn't that marvelous? Yeah, Mom, said Clementine. She managed to force a smile this time. That's great. Dr. Wim, Amal said, stepping up to the desk, are you looking for something? I swear, said Dr. Wim, if I had a nickel for every pair of glasses I lose in this silly office. Amal reached up and pulled the glasses out of Dr. Wim's hair, where she'd stuck them moments earlier. These glasses, she said. Oh, thank you, Dr. Wim said. She slipped them on. Wherever did you find them? And that's where chapter 2 ends. So today's job is going to be to answer some comprehension questions. I know that yesterday you made some predictions, so hopefully you were able to confirm at least some of them to see if you're on the right track. And I'm just going to quickly show you your job for writing. You have a write-on activity, and this journal mission says teachers had less than a day to learn a whole new way of teaching and connecting with students during this time. So I don't know if you remember, it seemed like it was forever ago, but the last time you and I were together was a half day in March. So they're talking about that day when we were kind of scrambling and putting packets together for you so you knew how to log in at home, and you were all shopping for books to bring home and things like that. So thinking about that day, and now thinking about how much time we haven't been together, you're going to write a letter to a teacher of your choice. So I know that I'm always flattered when you guys write to me, but don't forget that you have Miss Golden, you have Miss Boyle, you have Miss Little, any of the special teachers you can write to, Dr. Madison, Miss Warren, Miss Kay. If you go to enrichment, you can write to Miss Goodwin. So really try and think of some other teachers you might like to write to. And I think that a really great letter says some things about you, what's going on with you, and then has some questions for them. So I just wrote an example, and my letter is to Mrs. Dixon. And I added these little red notes here to remind you of how the letter should be set up and what should be where. So you're going to start with the date on this page. Then you're going to write who you're writing to, dear blank, and then your comma. Some of you are writing dear comma and then the person's name. You want to always write dear, the person you're writing to, comma. And then that's when you'll start the body of your letter by indenting here and then asking them questions, telling them about you. And on this page, it does give you some ideas of some things that you can include in your letter. You don't have to use these, but it just gives you some examples. But it says, what do you miss? What have you learned? How have you grown? Those are just some things you can include in your letter, but feel free to just tell them anything you would like them to know and ask them a thing or two that you would like to know about them. All right, keep up the great work. You guys have been doing some awesome stuff, and I'm really impressed. So keep it up.